There are forces in football that defy explanation. A power so overwhelming, it bends the will of giants and shatters the confidence of the league's toughest men. For 15 seasons, that force had a name: Reggie White. With 198 sacks, a number that places him second in the NFL's official history, he was less a player and more a natural disaster in cleats. Offensive linemen, men built to withstand immense pressure, buckled under his signature hump move. Quarterbacks didn't just get sacked, they were engulfed by a presence that was as relentless as it was overpowering. He was a monster, a game wrecker, of the highest order. Yet, this on-field terror was known by a name that spoke to a completely different calling: the Minister of Defense. Long before he dominated the NFL, Reggie White was an ordained evangelical minister, a man whose life was guided by a profound and public faith. The same hands that threw aside 300-pound opponents were used in prayer and laid on the shoulders of teammates seeking guidance. He was a spiritual leader in the locker room, a community pillar off the field, and a voice for his convictions, unafraid of the consequences. His two worlds could not have been more different. How does a man become both? How can a soul be defined equally by its capacity for ferocious physical dominance and its devotion to spiritual peace? From the war zones of the NFL trenches with the Philadelphia Eagles and Green Bay Packers to the pulpit, his journey is one of football's most compelling and complex stories. He achieved the ultimate honor with his induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but his legacy is built on the paradox of his nature. This is the story of the man who was both the monster and the minister. Before the roar of stadium crowds, there was the quiet hum of Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was here, in the community of Alton Park, that the legend of Reggie White began. At Howard High School, his athletic prowess was already becoming local lore. He was a dominant force, a young man whose size and speed were a combination rarely seen, earning him All-America honors and making him one of the most sought-after recruits in the nation. But while his physical gifts were evident to all who watched him on the gridiron, a different kind of strength was being forged away from the field, a strength that would define his entire life. From his earliest years, guided by his mother Thelma, Reggie's life was anchored in faith. His spiritual journey was not a footnote to his athletic career. It was a parallel path he walked with equal dedication. By the age of 17, his calling was so clear that he was already telling people he wanted to be two things: a professional football player and a minister. While other kids were simply dreaming of the NFL, Reggie was actively preaching in local churches, his powerful voice commanding attention in the pulpit, just as his presence commanded it on the line of scrimmage. This was the essential duality of Reggie White, established long before the world knew his name. In Chattanooga, he wasn't just the star athlete destined for greatness. He was the devout son, the youth minister, the boy whose character was built on a foundation of discipline learned from both the playbook and the Bible. It was here that the seeds were planted for the man who would one day be known as the Minister of Defense. The two identities were inseparable, forged together in the heart of the Tennessee Valley, preparing him for the colossal stage that awaited. When Reggie White arrived at the University of Tennessee in 1980, he was more than just a prized recruit. He was a phenomenon waiting to be unleashed. Under the guidance of legendary coach Johnny Majors, he immediately began to redefine what was possible for a defensive lineman in the Southeastern Conference. His combination of explosive speed off the line and pure, unadulterated power was unlike anything coaches and teammates had ever witnessed. From his freshman year, it was clear that the expectations for him were immense, and he was determined to exceed every single one of them. His career as a volunteer was a relentless assault on the program's record books. By the time he was finished, he had set the standard for defensive excellence, establishing school records for sacks in a career with 32, in a single season with 15 in 1983, and in a single game with 4. His senior season was a masterclass in dominance. He was named a consensus All-American, and most prestigiously, the SEC Player of the Year, an honor rarely bestowed upon a defensive player. He was the anchor of the Tennessee defense and the most feared man in the conference. But Reggie's impact in Knoxville went beyond the statistics. He was a leader, a man whose work ethic and quiet intensity raised the level of everyone around him. Coach Majors would later describe him as one of the most dedicated and impactful players he ever coached. When Reggie White played his final game for the Volunteers, he left not just as an All-American, but as an icon. He had proven his pedigree against the nation's best competition, establishing himself as a true once-in-a-generation talent, poised and ready to take his unique brand of dominance to the professional stage. After the upstart USFL folded, the NFL held a supplemental draft in 1985 for its remaining talent. The Philadelphia Eagles used the fourth pick to select a player who would change their franchise forever, Reggie White. He arrived not as a rookie, but as a seasoned professional, and his impact was immediate and overwhelming. In just 13 games, that first season he recorded 13 sacks, serving notice to the league that a new power had arrived. The city of Philadelphia, known for its tough, demanding fan base, had found a player who perfectly embodied its spirit. He wasn't just joining a team. He was there to build a dynasty of devastation. This dynasty would become known as Gang Green, one of the most ferocious and intimidating defensive units in NFL history. With Reggie as its undisputed leader, the Eagles' defense was a relentless force. Alongside fellow Titans like Jerome Brown, Clyde Simmons, and Seth Joyner, White anchored a line that terrorized quarterbacks and punished offenses week after week. In his 8 seasons in Philadelphia, he amassed a franchise record 124 sacks and was named the 1987 NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He wasn't just a part of the defense, he was its heart, its soul, and its spiritual guide. For the city of Philadelphia, Reggie White became more than a football player. He was an icon. He was the embodiment of the relentless motor and blue-collar work ethic the city prided itself on. The cheers at Veterans Stadium were never louder than when number 92 broke through the line for yet another sack. He was the unquestioned leader of a team that played with a fire and passion mirroring its fans. In Philadelphia, Reggie White transformed from a dominant player into a gridiron legend, creating a legacy as arguably the greatest Eagle of all time. For Reggie White, the final whistle on Sunday was not an end, but a transition. The same man who spent 3 hours creating chaos on the field seamlessly stepped into his other calling, the one that gave him his iconic nickname. He was an ordained Baptist minister, a commitment he made in 1981 while still in college, long before the fame and fortune of the NFL. This was the core of his identity. His life was a constant navigation between two seemingly opposite worlds: the controlled violence of professional football and the profound peace of his spiritual faith. For Reggie, they were not contradictory. They were simply different expressions of his unwavering passion and conviction. This ministry wasn't confined to a church building. In the locker rooms of Philadelphia and later Green Bay, he was a revered spiritual leader. Teammates recall him leading pre-game prayer circles, his booming voice asking for protection and strength, not just victory. He was a counselor, a confidant, and a moral compass for young men navigating the immense pressures of the league. Beyond the team, his outreach was extensive, pouring resources and time into underserved communities in his home state of Tennessee and the cities he played for. His work was a testament to his belief that his platform was a gift to be used for service. The name Minister of Defense was therefore no media invention. It was the most accurate job description in sports. It perfectly captured the man who could quote scripture as fluently as he could diagnose an offensive formation. His faith wasn't a quiet, private affair. It was woven into the fabric of his public persona, giving him a unique authority that few athletes ever possess. He commanded respect not only for the fear he instilled in his opponents, but for the profound principles by which he lived his life, making him a truly singular figure in the history of the game. For decades, the NFL operated on a system that tethered players to their teams, offering little freedom or financial leverage. But in 1993, after years of legal battles culminating in a new collective bargaining agreement, the era of true unrestricted free agency was born. For the first time, a class of veteran players had the power to choose their own destiny, to sell their services to the highest bidder. And at the very top of that class, the ultimate prize was the best defensive player in football, Reggie White. The entire league watched, waiting to see how this new power would be wielded. In a move that captivated the sports world, Reggie embarked on a highly publicized free agency tour, visiting with prospective teams in cities like New York, Washington, and Cleveland. The consensus was that he would land in a major market, but then he made a decision that no one saw coming. He chose Green Bay, a small, cold-weather city whose team had been mired in mediocrity for over 2 decades. On the advice of his pastor, he famously said God told him to go to Green Bay to help restore a championship legacy. The Packers signed him to a then-historic 4-year, $17 million contract, a deal that stunned the NFL. That single decision changed the NFL forever. Reggie White's choice instantly legitimized Green Bay as a premier destination and, by extension, gave hope to every small-market team in the league. He proved that a superstar's presence could single-handedly alter a franchise's trajectory and that a commitment to winning was more valuable than market size. His move was the first great exercise of player power in the modern NFL, a seismic shift that permanently altered the league's landscape. It wasn't just a signing, it was the beginning of a new era, and Reggie White was its pioneer.